Welcome to look number 2 in my week of Luminous Legends here on my channel. So first I'm going to show you what I'm wearing because I think you're going to love it, especially the Path Red Labs nerds amongst you. Look at this. This video is going to be a little bit longer than the other ones because it's Saturday and I actually have a little bit more time. So we're just going to do it Chatty Get Ready With Me style. I'm going to start doing my makeup and then I will explain the shirt. I'm going to take the Inglot Eyeshadow Keeper, which is one of my favorite eyeshadow bases that I have tried in the recent years. One of the reasons being that it keeps my eyeshadows in place for as long as they need to stay on my lids, and I also like the dispensing mechanism because unlike the eyeshadow primer portion which has the little doe foot, this you can just like squeeze out. With the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer portion, because of the stupid doe foot, I had this very strong feeling that at one point I wasn't really getting anything out of it anymore, and then after I cut it, literally half of the product was still in there. So I depotted it, I used it for as long as I could, it dried out, and now unfortunately I still have to toss maybe a little bit less than 1/3 of it, but still a significant amount, like more than I am comfortable with. So I prefer the Inglot Eyeshadow Keeper because it is cheaper and it has a better delivery mechanism. Anyway, explaining the shirt is what I was going to do. Let me tell you about the shirt, but first I'm going to do my little foundation concoction here. I'm going to use the Estee Lauder Double Wear in the shade 3 and 1, and I'm actually going to mix it with a little bit of the Prada Reveal Foundation in the shade L and 5, excuse me. I've been using this combination for the past couple of days and I've actually really been enjoying it. Although I think ultimately it would probably be better for me to just mix the 3N shade with the 2N shade. Taking just the tiniest bit of the Prada foundation because it is much lighter in tone. Now, to be fair, I don't know that this is the perfect tone for me now because when I tend to tan quite yellow, and the combination of these two is more like on the neutral side. So it is not the perfect combination for me. I should probably be mixing the foundation from Estee Lauder with the NARS Light Reflecting or the original 2N1 from Estee Lauder, but I don't know, I've been feeling like using my Prada foundation a bit more. Anyway, so there's really no specific reason I purchased this shirt other than I was out of things to buy from Pat McGrath Labs. I was on the website actually purchasing a lipstick as a present for a friend. I bought Nude Nocturne for a friend of mine at work, and then I saw the shirts and I thought, well, you know, since I'm here and I have to, you know, reach 50 euros anyway in order to get free shipping, I might as well just get one of the shirts. And let me tell you, I'm not someone who usually wears branded things. I don't really like to have huge like letterings or like explicit signs of a brand on me. If you guys remember when Mothership 5 Bronze Seduction was released, she also had a special edition of it with the matte you know, artwork on it, and I actually have that limited edition palette and I absolutely love the artwork on it. And when I saw this shirt, I didn't really think that it was like overtly obvious what brand it is, and honestly only like people who know what Pat McGrath Labs is would even know that this is a branded shirt, so to speak. So I bought it. I didn't really know what I would think of it when it came here. I think it's fairly decent. I don't know that the artwork that is printed on the shirt is of the absolute highest quality. It's okay. The actual shirt is of decent quality as well. Hopefully it will last me well. And I bought it on sale. I have to say it was obviously discounted when I bought it because I think it was one of those like vault sales or whatever mother likes to call them. But anyway, that's the reason for the shirt, and I purchased the shirt around the beginning of the summer, I want to say sometime in June, and then it was too warm for me to wear it, so I've literally only started wearing it like the past couple of weeks or something, and I've actually really been enjoying it. I'm wearing basically true to my size. I ordered the size XS, and that I usually wear size XS or S up here, so it fits me perfectly, so I think the shirts run pretty true to size. For concealer, I'm going to take a little bit of the Chanel Sublimage concealer, and I'm just going to take a tiny bit on my little spatula, and I'm going to apply it this way. I feel like this is a much more efficient way of getting the product out instead of my fingers. So I think I'm now light enough to be able to pull this concealer off again. And I thought maybe we can also like briefly chat about my little work trip to Paris. So as you guys know, I just returned from a few days. I was there for an annual meeting of one of the consortia that I am in. And because the leader of the consortium is from an institute in Paris, we had the annual meeting also in Paris. And we traveled on Monday, and we decided to go by train because there's actually a really nice option to go with the Eurostar train. So that's the fast train that you can catch from Amsterdam and Rotterdam, I think, mostly. And then you can travel to Paris and you'd be there within like 3 hours or something. And I had never really been on the Eurostar, so I was actually quite excited for it. We traveled to Amsterdam, and I have to say the trip feels rather long because the city where I live is not necessarily really close to Amsterdam. It's like about a 1.5 hour away. Rotterdam would not have been any closer either. So either way, we were looking at roughly 1.5 hour to 2 if you consider also that we have to get to the central station before we even get to the Eurostar train, and then an additional 3 hours, no, a little over 3 hours on the Eurostar train. But anyway, the Eurostar train was a fun experience, and something that I don't know if I have mentioned before, but I suffered from a little bit of like fear from like high speed. So every time that I'm in a car and the car speeds more than 110, 120 kilometers per hour, which is fairly average, you know, for most highways in Europe, I started to feel it in my stomach and I started to panic, and unfortunately that has gotten worse over the years. And I developed that fear, by the way, over the course of the years. I didn't really have that when I was younger, it just kind of like grew over the course of the years, and since the pandemic it has actually gotten a lot worse. So I'm going to take the Gucci translucent powder in shade Matte Natural 000 to set the foundation on my face. In the beginning, we were traveling like in between cities, so the train was not really traveling, I think, at its full speed. So I didn't really look up what exactly it means that we're taking a fast train, like what is the maximum speed that train can reach. I didn't look it up. It's probably better that I didn't look it up in advance. So, you know, in the beginning, as we were traveling between cities that were a little bit closer by, it was still going at a fairly like normal train speed, so it wasn't anything remarkable. And at that point I thought, what's really fast about this train? But as soon as we entered like the longer stretches of fields, the speed really like went up, and I started feeling it in my stomach. And at first I started to feel like, oh, something in my stomach what is going on? Like I feel a little bit anxious, and then I realized, I think this train has finally reached its actual speed, and that's why it's called high-speed train. And then I looked over to my colleague and we had like a brief like exchange, and she also mentioned that she could feel like the speed of the train in her stomach, and only at that point did I look up what is the actual speed that train can go at. And it turned out that the maximum speed the Eurostar can reach is around 300 kilometers per hour. Now, I don't dare to tell you at what speed we were traveling, but I want to say it might have been something upwards of 200 kilometers per hour. It was quite fast. I feel like my skin is looking a little bit dry, so I'm going to go with cream products for my cheeks. I'm going to take the Fenty cream blush in the shade Honey Glaze. This is a fairly old release from Fenty. I'm not even sure that these exist anymore, but it is a really lovely bronzer, really nice shade. So I'm going to use that to bronze up my skin. Oh, and I forgot to do my brows. Well, I'm going to do that afterwards. Anyway, so we reached Paris very much in time. I think there was a little bit of a delay, but really nothing significant. So we arrived, like I said, on Monday, and then as soon as we arrived, we went to check into our hotel. And there's a little fun story about the hotel. Not about the actual hotel, although the actual hotel was also like quite funny. But when we were arranging to go to this meeting, people started messaging me like, oh my gosh, it is so expensive to rent a hotel room in Paris. Like, what are we gonna do? Can we find something cheaper? And I was like, guys, we're going to Paris. We're not going to find anything cheaper. But then on top of that, completely coincidentally, just by looking at Pat McGrath's Instagram, I realized that we're going during Fashion Week. And I thought, oh, that might be one of the reasons that the hotel was maybe even more expensive than it would normally have been. But essentially, we paid 300 euros per night, per person, to stay in a shoebox because that was the size of the hotel room. It was basically a shoebox. And if you were unfortunate enough to be taking a shower at the wrong time of the day when maybe other people were showering, you were basically going to have to shower with lukewarm water. So there you have it, Paris for you. And we weren't even staying in like a super well central. I don't really know Paris all that well to tell you. Let me tell you what I'm doing for blush. I'm going to take a Sun-Kissed Seduction. I have little labels now, so this is Sun-Kissed Seduction, one of the cream blushes from Pat, and I'm just going to apply on my Sonia G brush straight from the blush itself. So we were staying in the area of Montparnasse, if that says anything to the people who actually know Paris better than I do, because that's the our hotel was almost literally across the institute where the meeting was going to be held. So we stayed at the region of Montparnasse. I don't know whether that's a very central region. I think it's a fairly central region because it was quite walkable distance to the Eiffel Tower and some of the other major attractions. Walkable distance also is like a little bit relative depending on how much you're willing to walk to places, but I feel like it was not very far away. So maybe it was also a fairly central area, and that's why it was so expensive. But honestly, we looked a bit around and there was really nothing cheaper. That's why we thought, okay, it's better that we stay close to the institute so that at least we are close to the location where we need to be every day. We stayed for 2 nights, and then on the day that we arrived, we actually just wanted to do a bit of sightseeing. We didn't want to rush on the day of the meeting itself because yeah, it would have been, if there was any sort of delay with the train, we would have missed part of the meeting, which was not the idea. So that's why we went a bit in advance, and I feel like we collectively also wanted to do just a little bit of sightseeing when we were in Paris. For my highlighter, I'm going to make a little concoction of my Dior Glow Maximizers in the shades Peachy and Gold. Gosh, I haven't used these in so long that I had to like think about what they're called again. Anyway, I'm going to just make the little concoction on my cheekbones. So we went immediately to explore on the first afternoon that we were there. We were fairly lucky because when we arrived it was quite sunny. It was not super cold. It's been getting a little bit cooler here in Europe now that it's fall, but we were very lucky with the weather. So we took a walk to the Eiffel Tower, and may I say, it's been a while since I've been in Paris and a really long time since I've done any sort of like tourism there. But so the region of the Eiffel Tower was completely surrounded by these like metal things. They were like all over the park area of the Eiffel Tower, and it just didn't look very attractive. I'm gonna be honest with you. Your only option of seeing the Eiffel Tower was from basically underneath it, because the park in front of it was completely closed off. I don't know whether that was still, you know, remnants from the Olympics and the Paralympics, or the actual fashion week that was going on, or all three. But either way, the first time I went to Paris many years ago, I remember we walked into that park towards the Eiffel Tower, and you could like see it from a distance, and it was quite lovely, and I sort of missed having the option to have that view. Anyway, but you know, the Eiffel Tower is the Eiffel Tower. It's still standing there. It's still remarkably brown, even though on all the pictures it looks like more of like a charcoal gray silver. So it's always funny to be reminded that it's actually not that color, it's actually just brown. And now I'm going to quickly do my brows with the Benefit 24 Brow Setter. I want to give you a few thoughts on this now that I have used it for a couple of weeks. It's fine, but it is not meant for someone with my brow hairs. I have very thick, very unruly hair and brow hair, and this just is not strong enough for me. It does not give me the same like truly laminated effect that I get from the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax. I think if your hairs are not as thick and unruly as mine are, you might actually really enjoy this product because it is easier to use compared to the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax. This you can just like whack on with the little brush here. Also, I don't know that I'm a fan of the brush. It's a very weird shape. It's like flat with the bristles on both sides, and I'm trying to get used to it, but I'm not vibing with it. It's just not for me. The Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax has the downside that it deposits quite a bit of product on your brows, so you have to brush it off with a separate spoolie. Whereas with this one, I feel like that's not really necessary. It doesn't deposit that much product, and the product is a somewhat thinner consistency. and it's transparent, so it doesn't really leave any sort of like weird residue on your brows. So if your brow hairs are, you know, a little bit more compliant than mine, I think you might really enjoy this product. I unfortunately think it's just okay, and I'm not going to repurchase. When this one is done, I'm going to repurchase my Too Faced laminating brow wax, because that actually properly laminates my brows. Okay, I've zoomed you in, and before I go on with my story, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do for a look today. So I was playing around with the palette a little bit earlier, which you might be able to tell because I think there's still a bunch of glitter on my eyelids. And I was debating whether I want to use this shade or the flame orange shade here. And I think I'm going to go for the flamey orange shade here. But I didn't play around with this matte yet, so this is the more like corally matte shade. That is the shade Coral Caress. I'm going to apply just the absolute tiniest bit of this shade through my crease, and then we're immediately going to go straight into that flaming orange shade with the sparkles in it, so that I can show you that that shade can actually just easily work as a one and done. But I just wanted to demo this one for you, and I'm actually very curious about the tone, because I don't want it to be too coral pink. Oh, this is nice. This is actually not too intensely coral. It can be applied as a very subtle coral shade. That is nice. But I'm going to keep it at that, like very light application. And then the day after the meeting started, there's nothing interesting to report there. We just like sat through a lot of meetings, which was very, very tiring. But then in the evening they took us out for dinner, and we had dinner on a cruise boat along the Seine. And it was lovely. The weather was nice. We could go up on the boat and like see the city, you know, in the night lights. They had like the little twinkling lights on the Eiffel Tower. It was actually quite lovely. And then on Wednesday we had still a little bit from the program in the morning. We got on the Eurostar around 3 p.m. and then we were back home around 9 p.m. So overall it was short and sweet. It was very tiring. Oh gosh, I almost forgot to tell you the most important part of the story, which is that on the second day of our trip, we didn't have a program in the morning, so everyone was free to do whatever they want. And I decided to take a little solo trip to Sephora, and I googled biggest Sephora in Paris, and of course the biggest Sephora in Paris is on Champs-Élysées. So I basically took the bus and I had it there. It was a wonderful day. It was sunny. It was just so incredibly lovely. But I also had a very funny experience with the bus. So if anyone here is from the region and knows what is going on, please explain. In the meantime though, I am going to take the shade Flame Fatale. So that's this one here. And I'm actually going to first apply a little bit of that using my fingers. And by a little bit, I just mean the absolute tiniest bit. And I'm going to just smoosh that all over my lid, and I'm going to blend it out later with a brush. So I took the bus, everything fine. I even figured out, well, I didn't figure it out. My boss said that since the Olympic Games they now have a app where you can just buy tickets for the public transport online, which was very, very convenient. And then I took the bus, and at one point, you know, we were going, and at one point everyone got out of the bus and they were like, you have to get out the bus because the bus is not taking any more passengers, it's just like going without passengers. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I was speaking to some people at the bus stop, and apparently that happens more often in Paris buses. But at that point we were very close to the Seine, so I just had to cross the street, walk a bit further, and I would be basically at the Champs-Élysées, and it was a lovely day, so I didn't really mind the walk. So I basically walked the rest of the way. By the way, I'm now taking the big blending brush, and I'm just going to blend this shade out on my lids as it is. Now I think with this shade you might get a little bit of like chunky glitter fallout. It's actually not bad at all considering how much flakes there are in here. There is not much or at all anything that you can see on my cheekbones for the moment, so I think so far it is going pretty okay. I'm going to blend this out just using a brush. Honestly, I don't even think you need the Coral Caress shade. You can just easily blend this shade out on its own. It's just a little bit easier if you have the matte shade laid down already. So I went to the biggest Sephora that I could find, and it was an amazing experience, mostly because I'm going to open by saying I didn't buy anything, to my own shock and surprise. I honestly thought that I would buy something just for the sake of buying something from you know, a Sephora in Paris, but I didn't, because while I was walking through the store, you know, frantically thinking in my mind, okay, oh my gosh, what am I going to buy? What am I going to buy? I was also in a bit of a hurry because I didn't really have hours upon hours to stay there. I realized I already own half of the store, so there's really nothing left for me to buy unless I buy something for the sake of buying it. And I really have tried to get out of that mentality recently, buying something just for the sake of buying it. Like buying something just because I'm at Sephora. No, we buy something if we need it. And if there's something that is in Sephora but I can purchase online with a discount code, we're not buying it in Sephora. To be honest with you, I don't necessarily think that there's any need here to be applying any sort of glitter glue, so I'm actually not going to apply any sort of glitter glue. What I am going to do though is take a little, you know, smaller pencil crease type of brush, and I'm going to try to apply a little bit of the matte brown here, the Sable Seductress shade, in the outer portion of the eye, just for like the tiniest bit of definition there. And just to see how this applies over top of such a sparkly shade, just to see whether it works. Usually I would do it the other way around, but now I decided last minute to apply the brown shade, so we can see how that works. It's actually not working out too bad. I would definitely think it would have been better to do it the other way, but this works too. But the really cool thing was that I saw so many, like literally all the brands were there, you know, they had displays, everything. I could swatch everything, I could see everything in real life. I hung out a lot at the Prada counter because Prada is one of those, you know, makeup brands that I don't even think you can find in every Sephora in Europe. Like if I go to the Sephora in Sofia in a couple of weeks, they're probably not going to have a Prada beauty counter. So it was just really cool to see everything, you know, in real life. And I know for a lot of you who live, you know, in bigger cities and you have Sephoras, that's probably not so special, but for me it was really special. Like there was a Pat McGrath Labs, Makeup by Mario, House Labs, literally all the brands that you can think of were there in person for me to admire and swatch. So I had an absolute grand time. I went out of the store covered in glitter, but I didn't buy anything. So there you have it. I exercised a tremendous amount of self-control. This next shade though, I am going to actually apply a little bit of glitter glue because I'm just a little bit afraid what will happen if I apply it without glitter glue. And I'm mostly going to concentrate the glitter glue in my inner corners and maybe just a light dab over the orange shade. Just a teeny tiny dab, like this. Because also, as you may notice, when you apply glitter glue over top of a shade like this, it kind of removes the shade, which isn't really an issue if you're going to just reapply the shade, but I'm not actually going to reapply the same shade, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab a smaller brush and I'm going to go into Golden Muse here, the really flaky, yeah, Golden Muse, the really flaky gold, like light golden champagne, and I'm going to first apply that as an inner corner highlight. But I'm also going to lightly apply it over top of the orange. I've already tried this earlier in the day and I know they look really pretty together, so that's why I want to also show that to you. I had low hopes that I would run into Pat McGrath somewhere on the streets, you know, since it was still Fashion Week. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And even worse, she had a workshop or a master class. I'm taking now a few flakes of that golden shade, by the way, and I'm going to work it here over top of that Flame Fatale shade, because I think the two make such a beautiful combo. But again, you have to be super careful with that chunky Golden Muse shade. So, she had this masterclass planned in the Sephora France. Actually, I don't know, it was called Sephoria France, I don't really know what that is. I don't think she was in the actual physical store, so I'm not entirely sure where that event was. But it was literally like 2 days after we left Paris. So I was a little bit disappointed that I missed Pat when I had an actual opportunity to see her. We were in the same city for a couple of days. You know, I can at least relish in the thought that she and I shared a close proximity, physical proximity in space-time. Okay. Now I'm actually going to play a bit of an adventurous game here. And I'm going to take a little bit of the burgundy shade, which is the shade Bordeaux Brilliance, because I think that might make a nice lower lash line moment for this look. And the look turned out quite fall inspired in the end. Let's see whether I can make this Bordeaux something shade work on my lower lashes. And I'm applying the absolute tiniest bit here, okay? just the absolute tiniest bit and blending it out. And I think as a subtle shade it works quite nicely. Okay guys, no sparkle moment today because there is so much freaking sunlight coming to my room right now that there is no chance you're going to see anything even if I shine an artificial light on it. So hopefully daylight is doing this look justice. I do think it turned out really pretty. I will say this though, if you struggle a little bit with metallic sparkly eyeshadows, I can see how this shade here, the Flame Fatale shade, could turn out to be a bit of a problem for you, because there is a fair amount of sparkle in here that has the potential to be flying around. So I actually wanted to compare this to another shade from Celestial Odyssey, which I think is easier to use and is sort of in the same veins. Let me just pull that out. Now I have a single of it and I also have it in the Celestial Odyssey palette, so I'm just going to show you the single because it's the same eyeshadow. This is Corrupt Copper. So let's find out how similar Corrupt Copper is. I mean, it's not like a one-on-one dupe, but if you want like a nice flamey orange with like a bit of a golden sheen to it, because this is a metallic eyeshadow, this doesn't really have any sparkle to it, so it's a little bit brighter in tone. This is a bit more of like a deeper pumpkin orange with a lot of gold sparkle to it. But if you have Celestial Odyssey, you really like the shade and you think this would be a problematic texture for you, then I think you're okay. You're good with Corrupt Copper. You don't really need the new palette for this shade. On my lips, I wanted to wear a red lipstick because I'm also going to wear later my little Dior blazer that I have shown you in the past. But I also didn't really feel like wearing one of my brighter reds, so I decided as a compromise to wear one of the Divinos from Pat. This is in the shade Temptress. It's, you know, a very beautiful, comfortable red, not too bright. It's going to bleed around my lip lines like a mofo, because unfortunately this formula tends to do that to me. But luckily I'm not going to wear it for too long because it's just going to be, you know, out and about to town for a few hours and then back, so I think that should be okay. But while I love this formula, it unfortunately has a tendency to bleed quite badly on me. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this second look with the palette, actually third if you consider my first video. But you know, in the first video I also used the Celestial Jade Duo, so that doesn't really count. You can see how incredibly different in terms of the tonality this look turned out. The previous look was incredibly cool toned. This one is on the complete opposite spectrum. It is very warm toned. I think you can achieve quite a lot of different looks with this palette. I personally really love how the look turned out. I think the quality of the eyeshadows is beautiful, but I will continue to reiterate that the Quint formula has a bit of a learning curve to it and you have to apply a tiny bit and just go in small increments when you're using this formula. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look. Do let me know what you thought about it. I definitely love the look that I created in the previous video more because it's just so much more unique, but I do still really like this and it's perfect for fall, which is essentially the season that it is here in Europe. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and I will probably see you on Monday, because I don't usually film videos on Sunday. Also definitely not videos where I apply makeup, because it's like my skin pampering day. I usually do like a lot of like skincare on Sunday. I don't really do like application of makeup videos. If I film a video, it's usually like a makeup collection video or some sort of a swatch video. But I will be back on Monday to continue the week of Luminous Legends. So I will see you then. Bye!